started. Thanks so much for being here. It's amazing turnout. Good to see you guys. You keep going with all this. I'm Garrett Ball. I'm with Fulton Fire. Very happy to say that I just signed this. We have been calling it our CWPP update, but compared to this CWPP for our last one, it is crazy comprehensive and just a really great strategic plan for protecting our community. So it does have a lot of parts to it, I would say, and some of them seem pretty tough. But what we do in the fire service when we come across a super complicated task that seems impossible, we start with a "we got this" attitude. So I think we got that here tonight. We break it down into manageable chunks and we get to work, right? So like I said, lots of work, but we'll get through it together as a community. There's a call to action for each and every one of you in it. So we got this. Let's get to work, right? So a lot of people put a ton of time into this, and like I said, it's just the beginning. But I'd like to thank our core team and our partner agencies and all of you for attending meetings and continuing to attend meetings. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kenzie from the Ember Alliance.
This is a full house, so if you have trouble hearing me in the back, just like point up or like somehow show me that I need to raise my volume. But thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Garrett, as well. So just a little introduction. My name is Kenzie Hart. I've been working with Garrett and the entire rest of the core team to walk through this project over the last 14 months. I work for a nonprofit called the Ember Alliance. Our goal is to help repair the relationship between people and fire on the landscape. And so one of the ways we do that, of course, is helping communities plan for their own wildfire adaptation. Tonight, we've got the welcome, of course, we just got. I'm going to go over the CWPP, just the process that we went through, what a CWPP is, just in case anyone hasn't been to one of these meetings before. I don't want to assume. We will talk about the analysis. We'll talk about the results and how we will go about implementing that. And then we'll have a bit of a panel of all the folks who are here who have resources or services available to help you as the community. And then we'll open it up to Q&A after that. So if you have any questions, write them down, put them in your phone, hold them for the end. Okay, so at the end of this meeting, what I want you to know is how to understand what your wildfire risk is. We'll go over it briefly. This is like an almost 300-page document, so I'm not going to read through all of that with you, but understand what your wildfire risk is and where to find more information about that, what your responsibilities are, what the responsibilities are of partners, agencies, and other community members. Know what steps you can and should take from here to the 5 years from now. That's kind of the time horizon we're looking at for this plan, and where you can go to find resources and help when you need it. So wildfire adaptation, doing treatments, doing fuel treatments is not a new thing to this community. This has actually been happening for a long time. This is a map of various past and planned fuel treatments within Coal Creek Fire Protection District. If you're not familiar with this boundary, this is the tax district that Coal Creek Canyon covers. We've got Highway 93 and 72 over there, and it matches up. It goes almost to Pine Cliff over here, just for a little context there. But there have been fuel treatments everywhere you see blue, yellow, and gray. And then of course there have been wildfires, which are a way to alter fuel on the landscape. So this isn't a new thing that is coming up. This has been happening for decades now. What we did to help make this process a little more bite-sized is we divided the community up into what we call plan units. You've probably heard Court talk about these. Plan units are basically your neighbors, your sort of smaller community that we want you to work with during this, and also it's a way for us to share a little more specific risks. So we're not just telling you everyone in the canyon has this type of risk or not. So you'll see me reference these. This is also available as an interactive map, so you can zoom in and see where on this map you are if you don't already know. So what a CWPP is, we in the United States have a lot of wildfire concerns, especially over the last couple decades. So of course, in 2003, Congress passed some legislation that enabled these CWPPs, these community wildfire protection plans, with the goal of enabling communities to make those decisions for themselves and get resources to mitigate the wildfire themselves. More recently, we've taken a bit of a broader approach. This is called the National Cohesive Strategy. One part of that is fire adapted communities, which is the main part of this CWPP. But it also looks at resilient landscapes and safe and effective response. So we do have some recommendations for both of those within here. I say this because we are aligning you and your community with the same goals as the rest of the country. They're all going for the same thing, but the ways we're getting there are specific to you. Fire adapted communities is a concept. The idea is that these lands have had fire on them for long before we were here, and that fire, we cannot get it to just go away. We tried it and it doesn't really work. So we want the communities who live here to be just as adapted to fire as these lands are. There's a lot of ways that you can look at this. One of them is, of course, resident mitigation, which is, I'm sure, what a lot of you are here to think about. But there are a lot of other aspects, like public health, policy and regulation. There are people working on policies and other, there's of course like a lot of funding coming down from the federal level, but also at the state and county levels to help with this fire adaptation. Of course, wildfire response, Garrett and his team are always looking at how they can do better and what they can do for you as a community. And then of course, we are looking at like recovery. If a fire comes, how can we make sure the community can still work and function and thrive after that? So we don't have to, you are not responsible for all of this, but you are part of this wheel, part of this broader approach to wildfire mitigation. For example, sorry, I did not have an animation. When we talk about a fire adapted community, there are a few different things that means. So like, of course, there's the hazardous fuels reduction over there. Those are those sort of landscape treatments, thinning, you might hear it called, or shaded fuel breaks. Those are common treatments, but that's only one aspect. Having those ignition resistant structures, so making sure your homes are less likely to ignite from embers is another part. Planning, so ensuring that the new developments that are happening are not going to add to the wildfire risk on the landscape. Zones, coding, and ordinances. All three counties that this plan covers, Gilpin, Boulder, and Jefferson County, are looking at their WUI codes, are looking at their building codes, and seeing what they can do to make sure that the people who live in their communities are as protected as they can be. So a CWPP itself is first and foremost a process. It's a process that took our community 14 months to get through, where we gathered as much information as we can, and then made a lot of decisions based on the best information as well as community feedback. It's also a plan for the next 5 years. So we went through this to create a shared vision, and now from here till 5-ish years from now, what is that, 2029? The goal is to execute that plan. There are 3 components that we have to address, though, as Garrett said, we have a few more in here. One is shared responsibility, so both with you as homeowners, landowners, and residents, but also with the partners who manage land here, and with those who have resources or things at risk that are very important or valuable to the community. We have prioritized those fuel reductions. So where on the landscape is it going to be most important for us to do those sort of bigger treatments to help protect the community as best we can. And then guidance for you as homeowners on how you can mitigate your own risk. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Meg Matonis. She's a senior wildfire analyst at the Ember Alliance and will tell you a bit about our risk assessment.
Hello, everybody. Great to see some familiar faces from the kickoff meeting that we had when we started this project. We're really glad that you're still engaged and interested in where this plan took us. Like Kenzie said, I'm a wildfire analyst with the Ember Alliance. I have my PhD in forest ecology, and I've been an on-call firefighter with Larimer County Sheriff's Office for 11 years. So I have an academic and operational background in fire. We did a rigorous science-based assessment of wildfire risk in your community, including looking at post-fire erosion potential. And we use this analysis to underpin the action items that we're going to talk about later. So there's a lot that went into the analysis, and the plan for what to do next is way more important than all the details about the analysis that I did. So the CWPP outlines all the methodology. So we refer you to that document. If you have questions at the end of the meeting, you can ask me or grab me afterwards. But I'll just give some highlights. Some of the maps, some of the results are scary in terms of there being a lot of red on the map. Like, the reality is that Cold Creek Canyon is in a part of Colorado that has really high fire risk. Jefferson County has some of the highest fire risk in the entire state, and in Jefferson County, Cold Creek Canyon has some of the highest risk. So, you know, that's scary, but you are also in really good hands. From our experience working in this community, there's a lot of place-based organizations like Saws and Slaws. There are groups that are really passionate about this and already making things happen on the ground. Your fire protection district was incredibly involved in this entire process, like almost more than any fire protection district that we've worked with. So this plan is actionable, and it's developed to help this community become more fire adapted. So, and the counties, also the 3 counties that overlap with the fire protection district, are currently updating their CWPPs. And an awesome thing is that this CWPP was ahead of the curve for the county's plan. So we were able to share all of the priorities that we came up with Cold Creek Canyon with Gilpin and Boulder and Jefferson County. So, you know, tearing up to the higher scale, there's a lot of players involved who are committed to helping you. So we're hoping the plan and this presentation creates a sense of urgency, but not a sense of panic, because communities can adapt to wildfire. Cold Creek Canyon is a really beautiful, unique area. In terms of fire perspective, you have highly variable fuels and really unique topography that results in wonderful wildlife habitat, beautiful places to live, but also areas where you can have really rapidly spreading wildfires in the eastern part of the county, where you have large grasslands. And when those dry out, you can get really fast moving fires. You also have some really steep canyons with really dense timber and homes interspersed among that timber. So there's a lot going on in terms of potential fire behavior. Like Kenzie was mentioning, these ecosystems, this landscape evolved with fire. A lot of plants and animals have specific adaptations to cope with fire. Human post Euro-American settlement on the landscape has changed the way that fire occurs. And this photo was taken in Boulder County, and it shows a really dramatic change in tree density on the landscape. And there's a lot of research that shows that in some of the lower elevation, drier forests, you can have up to 4 times more tree density today than you did in the past when fires occurred more regularly. So that's why Kenzie said, you know, the effort was to stop fire for a while, and that didn't work, because that's one of the factors that contributed to these really dense forests. So the goal is to try to learn to push these ecosystems back in a way that when a fire occurs, so this is Ponderosa, it's cut off. These images are also in the CWPP. So this is an infographic from the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute, and this is showing Ponderosa pine and dry mixed conifer forest. So that's some of the lower elevation forests that you have, and in Cold Creek Canyon. So there's variation to every story, but a common condition in a lot of these forests were that they used to burn regularly. It would kill some of the understory trees. It would kill some of the lower branches on the big ponderosa pine that have really thick bark and are more resistant to fire. So when fire would come through, it would burn the grasses, which burn really rapidly. The fire would spread through and you wouldn't have a lot of overstory mortality. Conditions today can result in fire that looks more like this, where you have active crown fire. So some of the goals of the fuel treatments that we're proposing in the CW to help create conditions where fire can burn more like this. Coal Creek Canyon has several different forest types though, so the same approach to fuel treatments won't work everywhere. So you have some more wet mixed conifer forests that have a lot of Douglas fir, some Engelmann spruce, and those had more variable fire behavior in the past. So there were areas where you'd have trees that the fire would burn all the way up into the tops of the trees and some of the big trees would die. Obviously we want to prevent that from happening right next to people's homes. So mitigation, fuel reduction, even in forests that used to burn with higher severity, makes sense in the context of protecting communities. A big challenge in Coal Creek Canyon is that you have a lot of lodgepole pine forest, which is beautiful and also has a very different relationship with fire. Like the Yellowstone fire, if any of you remember from 1988, looked like it was absolutely catastrophic. But years later, like that's the way that the forest adapted. And those forests now are coming back. And that's the way that lodgepole pine reproduces. The understory trees won't survive unless the overstory trees die. So you do have ecosystems like that. And managing those kind of forests is a little bit different. So there's some recommendations and guidance in here, the Colorado State Forest Service, Jefferson Conservation District. There's a lot of foresters who can help you figure out specific things to do if you live in the higher elevation forests. So now we're seeing red. So we did fire behavior modeling using some of the updated fuel conditions from the Colorado Wildfire Risk Assessment that came out last year. It's a product from the Colorado State Forest Service. And we used that data, did some custom fire behavior modeling for Coal Creek Canyon. And this was under extreme fire weather. So this is really high winds, really high fuel moisture. We also looked at more moderate conditions because areas that could burn with the high intensity when you have lower wind speeds or higher fuel moistures are areas that they're really ready to burn. So there is 50% of the area under moderate conditions that could have high to extreme fire behavior. So that includes fire moving from treetop to treetop and lots of ember production. Under extreme fire weather, it jumps up to 75%. I do want to show this next picture though. This analysis was released after we had moved past the stage of doing our fire behavior analysis for Coal Creek Canyon. This is from the US Forest Service. This is also in the document. So I know this is a little small to see, but the reason I wanted to share this photo is because we're not trying to vilify fire. Like we're just saying the ecosystem evolved with fire. Humans can live on landscapes with fire. And there's areas where fire can actually reduce risk if a fire burns under more moderate conditions where firefighters are able to control where the fire burns and are able to protect structures. It can restore some of the conditions that we've lost in the forest. So this analysis was looking at like where will fire have extremely negative impact. So that's more like the densely populated areas versus where could fire have an ecologically like beneficial impact. So just try to keep this in mind that, this map shows a lot of red, but red doesn't always mean bad. If your home is in the middle of red, there's definitely things that you need to do. And things that the fire protection district is going to do to try to change that at a landscape scale, but it's complicated. There's a lot of nuances to this. Okay, so we did all these analyses. What we did with those is come up with some priorities and some recommended areas to do treatments and other work. So we had a lot of wonderful partners who came and met in this room, and we shared a bunch of maps that we made. So fire behavior, these are the ones that are, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it just shows all the different layers that we looked at. So potential fire behavior, potential for areas to experience radiant heat that could combust structures or could experience embers that could ignite structures. We looked at where fuel treatments have occurred before. This map should have a giant fire right here. This is a Plainview fire. Kenzie and I were like sleuths, like this fire, 2006, big fire. Could not find a map of it anywhere. So Kenzie looked at like aerial imagery from like day to day around the time when this fire happened, and we found like the black scar, and I don't know how it got missed off this map, but it's in the document. So we do know that fire happened. This is the post-fire sediments. So we did look at that, and there were people from Arvada. Yeah, did Denver Water?
Not at that.
Yeah, not at that. Okay. But Arvada Water were here, and we were looking at post-fire sediment by gross reservoir, and that did inform some of the treatment priorities that we came up with. We also looked at a bunch of values at risk. So the gas station, churches, fire stations, the restaurants, places of gathering, government buildings, water infrastructure, recreational areas, where are those potentially exposed to damaging fire behavior? And looked at all of these. We had them printed out. We had clear laminated sheets that people could move from map to map and draw areas that they wanted, they thought treatments could be beneficial. It's a really fun interactive way to do it and get everybody engaged in thinking about not just the map of like fire bad, but also like, where do we really need to focus? Because there's potentially high severity fire next to things we really care about that could be impacted. So emerging from that were a bunch of landscape, a lot of stand scale treatments across the entire landscape. So there's a 3D kind of version of this on the story map that you can access. There's links to it throughout the document and then on the Coal Creek Canyon CWPP website. So you can zoom in and see where all of these different projects are. So not everything can be done immediately. So the first priority projects are really focused on in the CWPP as a place to start. This is a super go get 'em community. So you might get through all of those in the next 5 years or make good progress on them and then start being able to go to the second or third priority projects. And then when it comes time to update the CWPP, this can be a basis for starting the discussion about the next round of priorities. There's a ton of stuff to look at on this map, because we took a lot of variables into account. So the black and white dashed line, those are called potential operational delineation units. And the US Forest Service and a lot of other people in the fire service have drawn these boundaries, and they're areas where you could potentially catch a wildfire. So a lot of times those are major roads, topographic, ridge lines, rivers, reservoirs, things like that. So we took that into account as well. And then on here, we gathered information from community input focus groups. And we also wanted to map those on the ground, like where did you all express that you have concern? So that was taken into account. And then some of the areas where there was overlap between what you all express as concern and then what the science-based risk assessment showed, allowed us to identify some high priority projects that are important to everybody. So just a few of those that I'm going to I need the notes. I am not pulling up. Okay. So 10 of the top priority projects are shown here. Highway 72, as well as Gross Dam and Flagstaff Road and Twin Spruce and Gap Road are roadside fuel reduction treatments that are designed to make it safer for evacuees. And then also those are some of those potential operational mitigation. So to create strategic opportunities for firefighters to engage fires. There are also 2 projects with the intention of protecting communication infrastructure that is used for emergency alerts and for first responders to communicate with each other. And then there's a really exciting project, the Black Gulch Fuel Reduction Project, that is looking to restore forest conditions and reduce fuel to the western part of some of the most highly densely populated parts of the fire protection district. So there's who's going to be responsible for these projects, timelines, and additional details about them, about each of those priority projects in the CWPP.
And railroad?
The railroad, yes, the Moffett Railroad Ignition Reduction is another project that's in there, and that one's gonna take, we think in the next 5 years, that one's more of like a relationship building exercise.
What's the difference between first and first in progress?
Oh, great question. So there are a handful of projects that are already happening.
Okay.
Yeah, there's already funding for them. There's already trees being marked. There's already plans for treatment. Yeah, so those are the dashed ones. We just wanted to emphasize that. Some of this is already being accomplished. Oh, there. I've already talked about this a little bit, so I'm not gonna go into super detail because we just showed some of the priority projects are along roadways. So a little bit about what went into that was looking at where there are the potential for greater than 8-foot flame lanes along roadsides. The 8-foot flame lane cutoff comes from research looking at radiant heat emission and what it's scary. Like, I don't know how to talk about this. And I mean, it's somber. So it's radiant heat that could damage a human body if you're exposed to it. And as firefighters, we carry an incident response pocket guide, and it has like flame length cutoffs and the kind of firefighting that you can do. So like less than 4 feet, I could go out there with a shovel and potentially be effective with direct attack. 4 to 8 foot, if you're in a dozer, like a big tractor, you could be effective. Greater than 8-foot flame lanes, you shouldn't be near that fire. So that's where we come up with this 8-foot flame lane. And there are quite a lot of areas in the community under moderate or extreme fire weather. You could have damaging flames right next to the road. This is a modeling exercise. So some of this, like, before you start treating trees, you need to have a forester or somebody from the fire protection district, like look at that exact area and let you know like how much work needs to be done there. But it does show that there are a lot of areas with roadway hazards. And then we did some evacuation modeling for this community under different scenarios, like fire moving out of the southwest, fire moving out of the center of the fire protection district. Evacuation models have tons of assumptions that go into it. It's all outlined in the appendix. It's it assumes everybody's a great driver, everybody's making wonderful decisions. There's no smoke.
Sure.
But it's also assuming everybody's leaving at the same time. So it's like worst case scenario in some ways and best case in others. But what it does show us is based on where there's homes, based on how roads connect, what roads are more likely to experience greater congestion. Areas that could have congestion and high flame lanes are areas to start with doing these treatments. So yeah, there's a map too of priority roadways. So some of these roads are managed by CDOT and are merging out of this plan and the modeling and conversations along the way. There's already conversations with CDOT to start treating along 72. So things are already being done. Some of these are privately managed roads. In that case, who is responsible for doing these treatments varies. Surveying in this area isn't perfect, so it could take a little bit of digging and exploration to figure out like who owns the right of way, but the counties are aware of this. The counties, we're working with Jefferson County right now. They know like treating along roadsides is a big priority. So reach out to the fire protection district, reach out to your county. This is important. This is important to government officials and firefighters. So people want to help you with figuring out whose responsibility it is first and foremost is really important before you start cutting trees. Okay, I will pass it to Candace. Yeah.
All right, so the last area of prioritization that we looked at is community priorities. And so this is looking at those plan units that we talked about earlier. So a little bit of background across the entire community. There is fairly significant exposure for a lot of homes in this area from fire. There's different ways that fire can ignite a home, and that's important when looking at how you're going to defend and mitigate your home. So radiant heat is assuming that the fire is like the flames are coming up to your house. It is very close to your house. And under, is this extreme weather? Okay, under extreme fire weather, and when we say extreme, I think like Cold Springs fire, that kind of, that's a similar day to what we're modeling is extreme. More than half of houses are potentially exposed to radiant heat, and more than 90% are exposed to short range embers. These are embers that are within like 300 feet, like a football field away. And then for long range, it's basically all of the structures are potentially exposed to long range embers. There's also a risk from homes to ignite other homes. So of course, the vegetation risk is what we're looking at here. This is just looking at trees and vegetation and other things. We can't really model very well the way that homes ignite other homes. That's like cutting edge, tip of the knife science that's just coming out now. But what we can look at is how close homes are to each other. And that really impacts how likely a home is to ignite other homes or be ignited by another home. You know, the embers and the radiant heat from that. So what we look at is, oh gosh, I'm sorry, 100 feet? 30 meters. What?
Over structure, 100 feet.
100 feet, thank you. So we look at about 100 feet. That is your home ignition zone, the same one that the State Forest Service says you should potentially treat out to 100 feet around your area. So if your home ignition zone overlaps with someone else's home, we count that here. And everywhere that has, you can't see the white dots, but white dots mean that you aren't overlapping with any other neighbors. Blue dots mean that you're overlapping with at least one neighbor, and up to 5. And then yellow, red, and or yellow, orange, and red are going up to you potentially having overlapping home ignition zones with up to 41 different neighbors. This means that as a community, it's really important for you to work together, because your risk isn't only your risk. Your risk is your neighbor's risk, and their risk is your risk too. So I say that because yes, there is risk from vegetation, which is a lot of what we can look at, but your home can potentially be a fuel source for other people's nearby homes. So let's look at the overall relative risk to these plan units. We looked at both fire behavior. We went out and we spent a few days driving around all of the neighborhoods. Garrett took us out to a few of the neighborhoods. We looked at the condition of the roads and how likely we could get a moderate size, like a type 3 size engine into those areas if it was an active wildfire. We looked at the condition of the average condition of houses. So there's always some that are better and worse condition in every neighborhood, but kind of the average condition of those houses, how likely are they to burn? We looked at that evacuation capacity. So how long will it take for people in this neighborhood to get out? And all of those different variables went into this overall rating. So this is actually still very similar to the previous plan. We did have 2 that are the most at risk, and that's Wonderview and Burke. Those plan units have the most risk of all of the areas, and then we have a gradient down where Pica, which is just that little tip right up there, Plainview and Blue Mountain are those with the least amount of risk. And like Meg says, that doesn't mean there is no risk. It just means compared to the rest of the community, it's lower risk. Can we save questions for the end? Okay. Thank you. Write it down so you don't forget. Yeah, so this is relative. We put moderate because I don't think it'd be fair to say that anywhere in this community is low risk. And just because you live in one of those plan units doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking action. We also, so like I said, we looked at those different kinds of risks that each plan unit is exposed to. So, I'm sorry, it's cut off. So this one at the top there is fire risk. That's the type and likelihood that there's going to be a wildfire in that area. suppression challenges looks at engine access, so how accessible is the area to firefighters? Is there enough water, cisterns, hydrants, things like that? Evacuation hazards is looking at how long it takes out and are there pinch points or difficult areas for folks to get out? Is this a one-way in, one-way out neighborhood, or are there multiple egress points? And then home ignition zone hazards is that overall kind of average state of homes in that area. Each one has very different risks compared to the others. So those that are high risk have some that are high and some that are fairly low. And that means that there are different places to focus on. So we use this to inform the recommendations that are in each plan unit section. And that, so each plan unit has a page that tells you about the plan unit. So some of the risks and some of the things that maybe aren't as risky there. It has a map that shows you where, at least currently, there are homes and where those homes might have overlapping home ignition zones and where some of those priority landscape projects and those priority roadways are. So there's one map for every plan unit. And there are a series of recommendations from just a few to a lot of them. And those recommendations are specific to the risks that we are seeing here or that we saw up here. So I'll walk you through 2 different examples to show you how that kind of plays out. I can't tell you everything from the different plan units. You'll need to go read that. But Plainview, yeah, you can't see it. This is Plainview. Plainview is one of the areas that we rated as moderate risk, which is our lowest tier of relative risk within the community. No homes in this area are potentially exposed to radiant heat. So it's really only embers that they're potentially concerned about or neighboring homes. And there are not a lot of those roads that are potentially dangerous. So what are we recommending in a community like this? Well, let's look at the map. There are a few sections of homes that have those, you see these yellow dots. So if it's sitting on its own, that means that there's not another structure nearby. If it's overlapping those collective areas, those are who needs to be working with their neighbors to mitigate that shared risk. And then you also see we have the railroad line project and Highway 72 project highlighted here. So the recommendations, I'm not expecting you to read this right now, but some of the recommendations that we make for this community are that they prepare the home itself for fire to be more ember resistant. So roofs are more important in this plan unit, making sure that you have a Class A roof rather than maybe that first 5 feet or making a non-combustible section, I think is up to like 3 or 5 feet up off the ground. So roofs are more important to this plan unit. The other thing is this area only has one way in and out. So we are highlighting for this community that they ought to work with the community, their county, and any other potential resources that your community has to identify and create a secondary egress route. In contrast, we'll look at Wonderview. Wonderview has some of the most significant risk in this community. Almost 50% of the homes here are exposed to radiant heat from vegetation near the homes. And about 2/3 of the area could experience high to extreme fire behavior under extreme weather conditions. That's very different from Plainview. If we look at the map of their plan unit, almost all of these homes are sharing risk with other homes. And that is a big deal for this community. So their number one priority, the first thing we recommend is that they form a community mitigation group. That is more important than each person individually starting their work. but creating a collective action group here. So that's the first thing that we're hoping a community like this will do. We're also recommending that because they had significant evacuation and accessibility hazards, that they work on treating the roadways so that there is at least enough clearance and turnarounds, fire engines to access and residents to get out. But it has multiple egress points. There are multiple ways to get on the Highway 72, and you can go two directions from there. So we're not recommending that they need to go find additional egress. The other thing is some communities have elevated risk of post-fire sediment delivery, which is that post-fire flooding and all of the stuff that comes with that and potentially damages your home. So any area that has elevated post-fire risk has a section here at the bottom that talks about potential ways to reduce that risk, potential insurance options you might want to look at, and other information on that, because we don't go super into depth, but there are other story maps and resources to look at. So those are two very different ones. That's how the risks and hazards that we assess are informing what we're telling you and what we're hoping you will take on. So what are the actionable steps you can take? Of course, they are outlined there in the document, but to go over them fairly briefly, being prepared for an evacuation is a fairly simple and very important step, especially if you live in a community that has a one-way in, one-way out neighborhood. So getting yourself a go bag, making sure you're signed up for notification systems. If you live near a county border, or potentially even if you're vaguely near another county, consider signing up for multiple, because counties operate differently. And all that information is in the CWPP with links to their sign-up sites. Home hardening is the next most important step. So home hardening, we look at from the front door to the forest floor, I think is the phrase we use. So work on your home first. That's more important for protecting your home than moving the vegetation around. So potentially there's some actions that you'll need to save up for. Replacing a roof is not easy, and I know we can't all do that. I can't afford to do that right now. So work on saving up for those kinds of things, but also installing mesh on your vents or ensuring that your siding doesn't have any chips or other things like that. So taking care of your home and home hardening, those actions are detailed out in both the document and in the State Forest's HIZ guide, which are available back there if you haven't already grabbed one. And then there is, of course, depends on the space. This is going from your home all the way out to about 100 feet away. There are different recommendations for those different forest types. So we have in the CWPP, I forget if it's right before or right after, where we talk about all the specific plan unit recommendations. There is a bit of information about every single vegetation type here in this canyon and how you might want your 100-foot home ignition zone to look like. So what you're doing in Ponderosa is going to be different than what you do in Lodgepole Pine. And there are some graphics and information and details in the CWPP to help you figure that out. You also have a lot of other resources and smart people in this community. So we did a survey and a few focus groups. I'm sure a lot of you participated in that. Here, this is talking about mitigation that's already been completed by residents. So 70% of you have already started working on mowing and cutting regularly the grass within 30 feet of your home. And 67% of you have moved firewood at least 30 feet away from your home. More than half of you have had property assessments and installed Class A roofs. So a lot of you are already taking actions here. There are a few things that would help you, and we have noted that and addressed some of those in the recommendations. So having some support for chipping or slash removal is a common request, as well as financial assistance and education. Some of those things like financial assistance and chipping programs are requests that we have passed up to the counties. So all 3 counties are aware because they have more resources to address that, but it's also listed here in the CWPP. And what barriers most folks have? Of course, the cost is one of the biggest barriers, but not necessarily knowing what specifically to do on your home, or maybe not having the physical ability to do it yourself are some of the other biggest barriers in this community. So part of that is working together as a community. Sawsley Spas is an excellent example of an organization that helps both folks who have the physical capacity to do work and those who have the capacity to provide other things like organizing, financial assistance, food, things like that. The important stuff is the important stuff. Yes. So with that, there are a significant amount of organizations, groups, people who are here and able to help you with that. It's a lot to do. I know that's a lot to do, but you aren't alone. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe Dixon.
Thank you very much. I'm not taking it. So our CWPP is live. What are we gonna do now? Right? It's time to get to work. And kind of what Kenzie and Meg shared, you know, like what our CWPP gives us are those priority areas. Like it helps us focus our efforts and our attention on the stuff that's gonna have the most impact. And so that's really what we have here in this community. And who's gonna do it? All of us. There's a version of this that says you, but it's all of us. And we all have a responsibility here. Oh, I see it. Just the
Sorry, it's being a little complicated.
So on the property owner side, as Kenzie was sharing, our task is to take care of our own properties, right? And make sure that we're home hardening, that we're treating that home ignition zone, and doing our part of any evacuation route, and that includes our driveways. And so making sure that we can attend to this area. And then the next phase of that is our neighbors and that overlapping area that Kenzie and Meg were talking about. How do we impact our neighbors? Where can we work together and really amplify the impact? And the opportunity with neighbors is the opportunity to build some kind of community group. And it doesn't have to be a formal group. It can be a neighborhood. It can be everything up to a formal organization. But that kind of collaboration is really kind of what amplifies the impact. Like when we work together, we really can have big impact. And so as we move into those community organizations, this CWPP is a blueprint. It helps us as organizations know what we can do to have impact and where we should focus our attention. And then that keeps going into our agencies and our government agencies. It's similar. It helps those agencies identify the work that's going to be most impactful and focus where we can do our efforts. They can also use that information to do outreach and identify like what the community needs in order to be able to do the work that's recommended in the CWPP. And this CWPP helps us get grants. Part of the reason why the fire department made this investment was so that we could enable the community and the community organizations to get grants to fund these projects. That's a lot of the reason why we're here tonight. And finally, with the fire department, we can assist with the helping the community get these things done with resources like education and outreach information and resources and connecting the dots there. I do want to emphasize that the fire department does not have any funding to do any of these projects right now. Our budget is really tight. And so we don't have any wiggle room to do any funding. I'm not saying that's forever, but at this point in time, there's no budget. But, and as Kinsey referenced, we don't have to do this by ourselves. We have a lot of organizations in this community. We've really benefited from that. We've also had a lot of organizations that put attention on this community. And I'm gonna have a few of them speak now. The State Forest Service was not able to be here tonight, but they wanted to highlight, they're able to do site assessments. They're able to do building projects, like helping you organize a project. And they're able to help with grant funding. So the State Forest Service is a resource for that. Jim, if you want to speak about Wildfire Partners.
Sure, thanks for the invitation. I'm Jim Webster from Boulder County and Wildfire Partners. Wildfire Partners is Boulder County's wildfire mitigation program. And we call it Wildfire Partners because we have to work with everybody, private sector, homeowner, not just the government. So I'm just going to speak, unfortunately, just to the Boulder County residents, and we'll let the Jeffco and Gilpin County folks talk about them. But I really want to do this a thank you and then also a request. So we have 163 participants, homeowners from Coal Creek that are already wildfire partners. Hopefully you've seen some of the signs. They've been doing great work. Thank you. That really helps yourselves and all your neighbors. The request is, that's 29%. Pretty good, right? Well, actually, you're in 11th place right now. You're in the bottom third fire districts out there. There's some that are 50% or more. So we've got to increase that number up to 100%, right? We want everybody to do that mitigation, high risk, moderate risk. And so we have programs to support you. Talk about funding, free shipping for anybody, community shipping events to maintain that defensible space multiple times a year. We'll come and ship for you. For people who are in the program, financial assistance. So if you're in the program already and you missed out on the financial assistance because your deadline passed, we'll give you a new financial award. So come back, we'll support you. If you already got some financial award and you want a second award, we'll come back and help you there if you want to get recertified. So you have lots of programs. We have grant programs. When your Forest Service, your district goes out and applies for a state federal grant, we'll match it 50% with our strategic fuels mitigation grant program. So we have programs to help. Lots more I can talk about. We're bringing out rebate programs. We have Youth Corps working for people in need. So we're here to help you. And if you're in Boulder County, come talk to me.
Gilpin County.
All right, hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Cook I'm actually with Gilpin County, Colorado State University Extension. So the extension office, I'll speak about that first. We provide, so if you're cutting down trees, you may open space for beautiful wildflowers and potentially noxious weeds to come in. So I can help you with that, with identifying and management of noxious weeds, technical assistance. And then our office, our office is up at next to the rec center, if you know where that is in Gilpin County. So we sell grass and wildflower seeds that are mountain hardy. And I can also give you guys recommendations based on where you live. So that's kind of how extension can help you. And then just speaking a little bit as far as Gilpin County, we have a slash site off of 119 where you can drop your slash for free if you're a Gilpin County resident. And we're also, the county's working on their CWPP update right now with the hopes that we'll get some grant funding in the future to help you all individually with your mitigation projects on your land in Gilpin County. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tony Acello. I'm representing Jefferson County Open Space and to the best of my abilities, the rest of Crater Jeffco. Three main things where the CWPP calls Jeffco out. First is obviously managing on some of our property that we actually own. So that is in progress in some of those areas, but that doesn't affect the community near as much. The other big ones are slack, which I'm going to try not to steal too much of JCD's thunder. We may not have free slack yet in Jefferson County, but I do want to point out our program is only 9 years old. And last year, this is just a coincidence, but we happened to get just about 9 million pounds of fuel out of the community. So we're newer, but we are trying to catch up and we're doing our best. The third major way that the CWPP calls out Jefferson County's roles and responsibilities is in treating along evacuation routes and right-of-ways, things like that, which we know is a major issue. I cannot speak to state right-of-ways like Highway 72, but very exciting news, and this just really shows me how much, not just open space, but this was with the Sheriff's Office and the Office of Emergency Management. Just Tuesday, we put in a federal request for community-directed funding of $1.25 million to first prioritize, but then to most importantly, treat along right-of-ways in this area, which I think is just incredibly important. We heard all throughout this process that that was needed, that the community wanted it. The county leadership has heard you, and we are trying to action on that. We are really excited that we might get that done, and that is us asking for that was because of the input we got from this community. And finally, I am probably over my time already, but this CWPP will fund in or will fill into that modeling when the county is starting to look at where should we spend that $1.25 million. The fact that you already have prioritization routes is going to really significantly help this community. So congratulate you guys. This has just been a great community to be a part of, and this was a really great CWPP. So good job to all of you. Thank you.
That's what Tony said. Some of these organizations, their role in here is implementing projects. So CDOT attention on Highway 72, the U.S. Forest Service work on like Forsyth. That's where we're going to see some of the activity from these organizations. Maya, maybe Jason. Oh, okay. Jefferson Conservation District here.
Facing the back of anyone. I'm Garrick, I'm a forester with Jefferson Conservation District. Conservation District is pretty much like a school district or a fire district. It's a local form of government. However, we're not tax collecting. The reason that's relevant is because it means that we have some leeway in where we work. So we work within Jefferson County, assisting Jefferson County residents, but we also have the flexibility in working in areas that are in and around Jefferson County. So especially important in an area like this where we have 3 counties, the same watershed. Jefferson Conservation District works on the forest scale of forest restoration. So the folks at Member Alliance did a really good job articulating why it's important to do home hardening and create that defensible space in the 100-foot radius around your house. We're interested in looking at the forest beyond that, and we do projects with private landowners, preferably 40 acres or above, and that can be one landowner or a conglomerate of many landowners. And the idea is to restore the forest to a free kind of fire suppression ecology so that the fire behavior changes before it ever reaches your home. Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, we also have a slash program, which we run every summer in conjunction with Jefferson County Open Space. And it's a great way to get a lot of the material out of your yards. I think the schedule was just made public today.
Oh.
If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's very on the Jefferson County Open website, as well as you can find it on Jefferson Conservation District's website, which is jeffersoncd.com. So, and there usually is a site right at the intersection with 93, Blue Mountain Open Space. Really convenient way for folks in the Coal Creek area to get rid of some slack. So, yeah, if you have any questions, definitely find me after.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maya with the Boulder Watershed Collective. And before I tell you about our organization, I just wanted to highlight also that there is a Boulder Valley and Longmont Conservation District. And Chris is on the board here. He's part of your neighborhood. So, but you're welcome to speak also if you want to, Chris. But the Boulder County Conservation District functions very similarly to Jefferson Conservation District, and Coal Creek is kind of lucky to be at the intersection of both. So they both have foresters that can help you and your neighbors assess your land. So, and the CWPP website, the Coal Creek website, has contact information for both of them. Yes, so I'm with the Boulder Watershed Collective, and Coal Creek is part of the larger Boulder Creek watershed. And we are a nonprofit that basically focuses on the intersection of community and ecology. So we work on a lot of different things that have that intersection, and that ends up being a lot of work like this, where we really listen to the community or even smaller neighborhoods or groups of neighbors and really try to distill down what the main needs, priorities, barriers are, and then we really try to figure out the solutions of how to get what you need done. And so we have a lot of skills in grant writing and really understanding the resources of all of these different agencies and trying to help you figure out how you can access the best resources for what you need. And then also help build those projects sometimes. So we also have a couple of foresters on our team. And so we really like to work with groups of neighbors who kind of pull together. So your acreage is combined for forestry. So we're looking at larger scale projects that makes you more competitive for grant funding, and more, your work is more effective overall. So we are very excited to have this plan and to have all these established partnerships and to have the motivation of this community, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with you all.
Many of you probably already know Saws and Saws. It's a local nonprofit. Many of you also know Jody, I'm sure. We can help with the CWPP implementation and mitigation projects, both chipping and felling of trees, and possibly fiscal sponsorship, as well as project building and supporting building of community groups.
Hi, I'm Court Rich. I'm from the Blue Mountain Forest Stewardship Initiative. We're a 11-year-old nonprofit organization. Our plan unit, Blue Mountain, we decided to implement our CWPP, the recommendations in our CWPP, the old one. And we got a group together. We decided that the only way that it's going to work for our community was to start a nonprofit organization. So we're a Colorado nonprofit, 501c3. We've got a lot of grant money. We got a lot of work done over the last 11 years. And I wrote a manual on how to do it the way we did it, in case anyone's interested. Crescent Park used our manual to start their nonprofit organization. I have this manual is in the community ambassador handbooks that we're handing out today. So each of your community ambassadors will have that information to share with you. The only other thing I wanted to share right now is if you have any questions and you email us, or this is the fire department's community outreach team. Okay, so I'm the one that's sending you all the emails you're getting. I'm the one that, if you reply to any of those emails or just jump on our website or email us on our Gmail account, I'm the one that's going to be responding to you at this point. As we grow, many more people will be involved. If you have any questions, please just email us and we'll jump on and help you guys. Okay.
What's the email address?
I'll share it at the end.
Yeah, and there are flyers. Somebody's gonna be standing at the door handing you little half sheet flyers as you walk out. Those are the focus group schedules. So we really want you to come to the focus groups. We're doing those again in the pods that surround each of the fire stations. So everybody, please sign up, RSVP, come to the focus group. They're every Thursday night in June. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to say is, Garrett, thank you so much for putting out this schedule. And the Blue Mountain open space drop site, the one we all use, is open from May 23rd until June 2nd. Wow. So it's short this year. It's 2 weeks and it's coming up fast. So get those chainsaws going. We're first on their list this year, which we appreciate. but just guys start cutting and get ready to haul down. Thank you.
Thursday through Sunday?
Yes, Thursday through Sunday,
That's 2 weekends.
two weekends, 2 4-day weekends is what it's gonna be. All right, if you have any questions, email me.
Here to name a few examples. Tonight, I met someone from Pine Mountain Mitigation who would like to share. Flint, if you would like to speak.
Thanks. Court invited me to come up to the meeting. Just to give you a little background. My name is Flint Cheney. I recently retired from the U.S. Forest Service, where I was a forester and forest fire management specialist there. Since then, I've started a little business called Pine Mountain Mitigation, and I run into Garrick a lot. And yet, memo hit at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I figured after this meeting. I am also one of the Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Defensive Space Inspectors. I am with Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, the Wildland Fire Duty Officer, which means when the local fire department gets the wildfire, it kind of exceeds their initial attack capability. Those of us from the Sheriff's Department will show up and kind of help manage some of that. And I'm also the planning section chief for one of the federal complex incident management teams. So I wear all those hats. When I'm not doing that, I'm a clown circus too, but I don't. I'm happy to be here to answer questions. More, I don't live in Colquitt Canyon. I live in Jefferson County, way on the south side, so it's a long way for me to get here. But I'm happy to be here tonight to see this. And I did read, not word for word, but pretty thoroughly through the plan over about a month's time, and very well done. Thank you.
Second part.
I'm Barbara Mazza. I represent the Crescent Park Community Fire Protection Association. We are a nonprofit 501(c) also. And we've been together for 3 years, going on our 4th year. We have HIZ auditors, trained HIZ auditors that are available. One of them's here, Al Cook is here. So we do home inspection audits. We do fire mitigation. We've been involved both with our HOA and with other organizations to do fire mitigation, slash collection with shipping and disposing of that. So we invite you in Crescent Park to become part of our association because we need more people. We have about 12 to 15 people, and they work very hard and are very, very, very good at promoting our fire mitigation for our community, but we need more people. We need for our whole Crescent Park organization to be involved. So we are having an education meeting May 18th. I have some handouts if you'd like to come, and you will hear about all of our mitigation that we're planning, including looking at alternate evacuation routes for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. In addition to all the great organizations we just heard from, we are building a community ambassador program here in Coal Creek Canyon, and this was driven initially by our CWPP update process, and now we're moving into this new implementation phase. And so we have here of ambassadors, the people that have signed up to be the resource for each of your individual communities. Now, again, this can take many different shapes. It can be formal organization, it can be informal organization. And I fully expect, based on the needs of each community, that we could see a lot of different approaches to implementation. I mean, I fully expect that. I was going to have everybody stand up and introduce, but in the interest of time, if you are a community ambassador, at the end of this meeting, please come up and join Court here, and she's going to give you your guidebook. And then if anybody wants to meet with their community ambassador, come up in the same area so that we can do it. The community ambassadors will be focused on the plan unit recommendations. So the second part that Kinsey talked about. So the priorities within that plan unit recommendation, as well as the projects that are identified on the map. In addition to that, the Coal Creek Canyon Fire Protection District. Whoopsie. The Coal Creek Canyon Fire Protection District has decided to implement an implementation committee. Sorry for the redundancy there, but, so this is a new thing for the fire protection district. So, and our focus will be around implementing the top 10 projects, those priority projects within the community. But the fire protection district also does not have a lot of volunteer resources. So we need community members to build that implementation committee. If you're interested, please join me. And like I said, we'll be focused on the community-wide treatments, the things that were those top 10 priorities identified in the group. And we'll also be supporting that community activity. So how the individual communities implement the recommendations as well. So if you're interested, please contact me at the end of this session. And so then overall, let's get to work. As we referenced earlier, there's a Coal Creek CWPP.org website. And on that website, we have a resident action plan. We have the online version, it was previously referred to as a story map, online version of the CWPP, as well as the whole 300-page document. So take the time to look at that information, subscribe to emails, read updates on our website, because we'll be updating that and maintaining that content there. And then in addition to that, contact your community ambassadors, join the June, oh, I forgot to mention the June focus group. As Court was referencing, there's going to be a flyer in the back of the room that's about the June focus groups. And similar to what we did last year, where we had like similar areas, you know, around a fire station come together in those plan units, we can talk specifically about the recommendations for those plan units and think about what we want to start doing as a community to address those recommendations. So the schedule is on this flyer, and please join us for those. And then join the implementation committee that I just mentioned. And then finally, if you have any questions after this meeting, CWPP4, FORCPP@gmail.com is our email address. And that's also on here and on the other handouts. Time for questions. James.
I keep seeing upper Twin Spruce on everything. Why? I'm one of the first 4 houses.
So the lower Twin Spruce section is in the, I believe it's the Hilltop Plan Unit. So it's just grouped with the other areas near it.
The Hilltop what?
The Hilltop Plan Unit.
Oh,
Drew is your point of contact. Yeah.
Or is it official?
It is official. Now we do have, we have to update it in 5 years. So we're gonna work on what's in here, and I have no, I think it was one of these. I don't think we'll finish the recommendations in 5 years, but I truly hope that within this 5 years, we'll make progress on those and then be able to start working on the next phases. When we get to the next phases, we'll take a relook and say, okay, would the priorities we identified in this round be the same as what we identify next time? Yeah.
Sorry to bring it up. I didn't see anything about United Tower, and from a ignition standpoint, as well as from a defense standpoint, as far as the treatments go. Do they have any ability to get that cooperative corporation in touch with?
So yes, I had them on here, and they've been a great partner throughout this process. And there is going to be aspects where they can help individual homeowners when they're doing trees around power lines. And then there's responsibility that they have around their greater power lines. So yes, absolutely. They also applied for grant. I don't think they got it for burying some power lines in Coal Creek Canyon. Yes, they've been a great partner and will continue to be.
They ended up burying some of those anyways, even
Did they?
without them.
Without the grant.
Because it mattered to them.
Yeah, because people have trees that are gonna take out power for everybody else if they either fall or burn.
For sure.
Same as the heat rest, you know.
It'll all get handled at the same time.
So I have a question about, you said who's responsible? I am apparently on the number one for Canyon Route, and they said that they were gonna widen my road by 20 feet on either side. Does that mean I'm responsible for that tree mitigation, or are we gonna work together to figure that out? Because that seems like a huge burden on me on a 3 mile road.
You're on 72?
No, I'm on the
Going up to Thornton.
Thornton Tower that needs to be cleared.
Mhm.
There's 3 of us that own that road, and it sounds like we're responsible for that.
I wouldn't say responsible, like you are obviously a decision maker in that process, and so that would be one of the areas where if we identify that as a priority, which I believe it is, because it's the communication tower, right? Then we would work together to figure out what resources do we need in order to do that kind of implementation. So you wouldn't be financially responsible, but you're gonna have a decision-making stakeholder responsibility in the context of the work that we do.
Sorry. The CWPP is not intended to force anyone to do anything. It's supposed to help you understand the risk and give you guidelines for the next steps to do. There is no legal recourse for not taking action. It is entirely up to you. And as far as that, we can clarify that. I know Garrett and I can chat with you, later on, I know what you're talking about.
How do we find out if we have a class A roof or not? What's considered class A?
Are you, what county are you in?
Well, we will help you with that. Yeah, I'm taking on Jefferson County, getting homey different zone assessments going. Clint's gonna help, Clint is gonna help us. Where when we come to do your HID inspection, that's one of the things we look at. We'll be able to help you determine what type of roof you have and if it needs to be replaced.
In most class A, I mean, most shingles, the asphalt shingles are class A, there's class A by assembly. If you have a shake shingle roof, that's the biggest risk, and that's the number one concern. But if you have the asphalt shingles, they're often class A, depending on the assembly, but we're really concerned about the shake shingle roofs. And at least Boulder County, those have been prohibited since 1989. So when you replace them, it's been several years, you need to replace with a class A, is the regulation. So if you have a really old roof, in Boulder County, but pre-1989, there's a chance that that's not class A.
Yeah.
Any recommendations for people who have slabs and are motivated to get rid of it, but don't own a trailer? In Jefferson County.
The
What
group
county?
that you form with your neighbors. Somebody in your neighborhood has a trailer. And so you say, hey, if you'll pull the trailer, I'll help load your slash onto. So the more houses you get together, the more work you can get done. It is amazing how much work you can get done. We use the saws and slaws method. They taught us how to do our fuel treatment work events in a morning, from 8 in the morning till noon, when we feed everybody really good food. You can get, it is astounding how many cubic yards of slab, a handful of people, 20, 30, 40 volunteers. I mean, as your group grows, you'll get more and more people. In Blue Mountain, they're calling me and saying, when's our first event? When's our first event? Our volunteers want to do this because they've been trapped in their houses all winter and they want to see their neighbors. And it was such a wonderful community building experience for us. And it will be the same for you. Just get your groups going. And
So that the group is one thing, curbside chipping is another option where you just bring it to the access point, driveway road, and then schedule an event where we come through and chip road by road.
Except for Jefferson.
Saws and Slaws has organized that in the past. Boulder County now also has a program, so there's options out there, but yes, that's another approach. And it doesn't have to be one of those organizations. We can help you organize it.
And United Power has also, in some communities
Yes.
that have come together, brought a chipper.
Great, right? Gary.
Yeah. I live up on Happy. I don't like. You guys have done a phenomenal job. So, we got Denver City Park, right, I think. Oh, yeah. In the county.
Yep.
We got Candelas. We got Airbnbs now, and we have camping, right? And I know everybody in this room is all thinking about fire and everything, but when folks are passing through the more beautiful canyon, it might not be the thing that's on their mind. Especially if they're vacationing and, well, they're drinking and having a campfire. Right. And when Rock Reservoir gets done, and Dallas is gonna be up for kayak. We'll have. So on the prevention side, my understanding, it's either lightning or human cause. But when I was growing up, it was really cool to go into a national forest and see the Smokey the Bear sign with fire danger. And it told everybody going down that road that you were entering a different environment with different responsibilities, different sensibilities. And I did a little research online. I don't know if you can pull up here.
I can, but we're really close on time, so.
So, there's actually a Bible.
Yeah.
It's fine, for communities just like us, all over the country, and for the boards, and they go for like $1,600 for a full-size, taller than me, Smokey the Bear. So I'm thinking down by Blue Mountain. For the fire station. Maybe you're at the corner, or maybe camp. Maybe on the other side. They're not very expensive, and they have smaller ones, I think. I just think it'd be really cool. I think little kids in the community would do that. I think people coming in with the whole community on.
So thank you, and if you bring up a great point, what we have done here tonight. What we've done here tonight is highlight the big stuff, right? There is also a spreadsheet of over 100 different items that detail stuff like that. So how we engage with Denver Mountain Parks, how we inform those Airbnb homeowners and that kind of stuff is all line items in this spreadsheet. Like it's all areas we've said, this is work that needs to happen. And what we get in that implementation committee is really gonna enable getting that work done. So there's a lot of detail behind what you saw tonight.
Can I start shouting out now the community ambassadors' names? Come on up.
Well, first, before everybody breaks up, I just want to say thank you first to all of the core team that was part of pulling this CWPP together. Thank the fire department for their funding. The help with that too, and I want to thank our community ambassadors for agreeing to help us carry this work on. My dream is in 5 years, we're able to say, we got this work done. Like I said, I'm not expecting it to be all done, but I really want to see some progress on this CWPP, unlike what we had outside of Blue Mountain on the last one. So thank you so much for coming tonight.